Having a king or a queen is helpful because they follow a set of important rules called a constitution. This helps the country stay the same for a very long time and gives people a feeling of safety and peace. It is actually quite hard to find this kind of steady feeling in any other way, which is why the monarchy is so special to many people. It acts like an anchor for a big ship, keeping everything from drifting away during a storm. Right now, there are some very scary and mean stories being told about the royal family. These stories say things that are truly upsetting and very bad. When people hear these things, they feel shocked because the stories describe things that are horrific. It is hard for people to believe that such things could be happening in real life, especially to people who are so famous and important to their country. I do not think that either of those two people would have been able to handle the stress of what was happening if they were anywhere else. They were going through a very hard time, and it was a lot for them to deal with. The only good thing that happened during that whole difficult situation was that they were together in that specific place. Being there helped them stay strong when everything else felt like it was falling apart around them. Princess Anne is a very important member of the royal family, and she just did something that no one else in her position has done for a very, very long time. It has been so long that most people living today cannot even remember a time when a royal family member did something like this. She decided to take a legal step against a person who is part of the king's extended family. She actually took a stepchild of the king to a place where people settle big arguments, which we call a court. This big disagreement is happening because of a special place called Balmoral Castle. It is a very famous house in Scotland where the royals like to spend their time. A woman named Lopes was seen leaving a big meeting about this, and she looked very upset. She was shaking because she was so bothered by what happened. Her mother is Queen Camilla, but even though her daughter was upset, the queen did not say anything to protect her in public. The king did not say anything either. He just stayed very quiet while he was getting better from being sick. There's a very good reason why Princess Anne decided to do this right now while her brother, King Charles, is still resting and getting his health back. It might seem strange to do it now, but the reason will become very clear very soon. It all has to do with how the family is changing and how they are getting ready for the future. In February of this year, a very small story was written in a famous newspaper called the Daily Mail. This story was in a special part of the paper called Eden Confidential. It was a short bit of news, but it surprised all the reporters who spend their lives watching the royal family. None of them expected to see this news, and it made them all stop and wonder what was really going on behind the castle walls. The news was about Queen Camilla. She had quietly changed who officially owns her private country house, which is called Ray Mill House. This house is her special place where she goes to relax away from her royal duties. She moved the title of the house into something called a family trust. A trust is a special way to hold onto property so that it can be looked after for a family in the future. The official papers named two people who are in charge of this trust. One is her son-in-law, a man named Harry Lopes, who is married to her daughter, Laura. The other person is a man named Jake Irwin, who knows a lot about money. The people who will benefit from this trust and eventually get the house are the Queen's two children. Their names are Tom Parker Bowles and Laura Lopes. They are her own family from before she became the Queen. When this news got out, it spread across the internet very fast. Some people on the internet started saying things that were not true at all. They made up big headlines that said the Queen was trying to hide her house from the government so she wouldn't have to pay taxes. Other people said she was trying to pull away from the king's family to make her own family more powerful before Prince William becomes the king one day. But the real truth is much simpler and actually more interesting than all that made-up drama. Ray Mill House is not actually royal property. It does not belong to the king or the crown. Camilla bought the house herself back in 1996. She paid £850,000 for it after she got a divorce from her first husband, Andrew Parker Bowles. She used her own money to buy it so she would have a place of her own. The house sits on a big piece of land that is 12 acres large. It is located in a tiny village called Raybridge, which is near a place called Lacock in a part of England called Wiltshire. The house is very big and has 6 bedrooms for people to sleep in. It also has a swimming pool outside, buildings for horses called stables, and even 7 beehives where bees make honey. There is even a pretty pond that gets its water from a nearby river called the River Avon. The inside of the house was decorated by a famous designer named Robert Kime. In the big room where people sit and talk, there is a painting of Camilla's great-great-grandmother. Her name was Alice Capel. She was a very famous lady a long time ago who was a close friend of King Edward VII. This shows that Camilla's family has been connected to the royal family for a very long time, even before she met King Charles. The honey that the bees make at her house is very special. It is sold at a very fancy and famous store in London called Fortnum and Mason. Also, the gardens at her house are so beautiful that a famous gardener named Monty Don wrote a story about them in a magazine called Country Life. Camilla even helped edit that magazine during the summer of 2022 to show off how much she loves plants and nature. The reason she put the house in a trust is to get ready for the future in a smart way. She wants to make sure that her children can have the house without having to pay too much money to the government. In the United Kingdom, there are rules about how much money you have to pay when someone dies and leaves things to their family. This is called inheritance tax, and it can be very expensive for big houses. Usually, if someone gives a house worth a lot of money to their children, the children have to pay a 40% tax. That means if the house is worth £1,000,000, the government takes £400,000. By putting the house in a trust with people to look after it, the family is just being careful with their money. It is a very normal thing for families with big houses to do. It is not a secret plan to hurt the king or the monarchy at all. Queen Camilla still lives at Ray Mill House. She still writes letters to the local leaders to ask for permission to fix things at the house. Just this year in February, she asked the local council if she could cut down an old cypress tree that was rotting and falling apart. They said yes, and she was able to take care of her yard just like any other person who owns a home would do. The real mystery is not about the house itself, but why she chose to do this right now. King Charles is still working on getting healthy again after being sick. At the same time, the people at the palace are getting ready to change how things work for the next generation. And while all this is happening, Princess Anne has been working behind the scenes to change who has the most power and influence inside the royal family. To understand why Camilla might be in a hurry to organize her personal business, you have to understand Princess Anne. She is the king's sister, and right now, she is probably the most important person in the family besides the king himself. She carries a lot of weight, which means people listen to her and respect her a lot because she works so hard and knows so much about how things should be done. Princess Anne will be 75 years old in the summer of 2025. Even though she is getting older, she does not stop working. In the year before her big birthday, she went to 474 official events. That is a huge number. She has been the hardest-working member of the royal family for 6 years in a row. She does more work than anyone else, even when things are difficult for her. She did all of this work even though she had a very scary accident at her home, Gatcombe Park. She had to stay in a hospital in Bristol for 5 nights because of what happened. It was a very frightening time for her family and for the people who care about her. Everyone was worried because she is such an important part of the team that keeps the royal family running smoothly. The accident happened on a Sunday evening in June of 2024. Anne was walking through the fields on her farm to go check on her chickens. While she was walking, she bumped into a horse. The horse accidentally hit her, and the impact was very strong. She got a concussion, which is a brain injury that happens when your head gets hit hard. She also had other injuries that looked like she had been kicked or bumped by the horse's legs or head. Princess Anne actually does not remember anything about the accident itself. When she woke up in the hospital, the doctors and nurses had to tell her what happened because her memory of that moment was gone. A close friend told a newspaper that the accident was actually much worse than the public was told. It took many months for Anne to feel like herself again, but she is very tough and did not want people to worry about her. Even though she was hurt, she went back to her royal jobs in less than 3 weeks. By the middle of July, she was already back at a big event for people with disabilities who like to ride horses. Prince William and his wife, Kate, sent her a very nice message on the internet. They called her a super trooper, which means someone who is very brave and keeps going even when things are hard. They said they were very happy to see her back at work so quickly. This moment showed everyone how important Anne is to the family. She is like the adult in the room who makes sure everything stays organized. She is the worker who never complains, no matter how tired she is. When King Charles and Princess Kate were both fighting cancer at the same time, Anne was the one who did extra work. While Prince William was staying home to take care of his wife and children, Anne stepped up to make sure the royal family's work didn't stop. Anne has been very honest about how she thinks royal life should be. In a famous magazine interview a few years ago, she jokingly called herself a boring old fuddy-duddy. She told the younger royals that they should not forget the basic rules of duty and hard work. She believes that doing the job well is more important than being a celebrity or getting a lot of attention on social media. Before the king was crowned in 2023, Anne spoke to a news station about the idea of a slimmed-down monarchy. This is the idea that there should be fewer people doing royal work. Anne said she did not think this was a good idea. She said that the idea was made up when there were more people around to help. From where she was standing, having fewer people to do all the work just didn't seem smart because the work is very important. She also said some very interesting things about her brother, the king. She said that with Charles, you know what you are getting. This means he is very steady and predictable. He has been practicing to be the king for a very long time, and she does not think he will change his personality or his ways just because he finally has the crown. She knows him very well because they grew up together and have supported each other their whole lives. Many people on the internet like to pretend that Anne and Camilla do not like each other. There are even fake videos where it sounds like Anne is saying mean things to Camilla. But those videos are not real. A group of people who check facts found out that those voices were made by computers using artificial intelligence. They were created just to start drama and make people click on videos, but the two women actually get along quite well. The truth is that Anne said some very nice things about Camilla in a documentary film. She said she has known Camilla for a very long time. Anne praised Camilla for understanding her role so well and for helping the king so much. And even said that being a queen was not something that came naturally to Camilla, but that she has worked very hard and now does a fantastic job at it. The history between Anne and Camilla goes back many years, much further than most people realize. A long time ago, before Camilla married Charles, she was known as Camilla Shand. The man she loved and eventually married the first time was Andrew Parker Bowles. But Andrew was not just a regular soldier. He was also the serious boyfriend of Princess Anne for a few years in the early 1970s. When Andrew asked Camilla to marry him in 1973, stories say that Princess Anne was very sad. One writer said that Anne was in pieces because she had liked him so much. Very soon after that, Anne decided to marry her first husband, Mark Phillips. It was a very complicated time for all of them because they were all friends and all dating people in the same small circle of friends. Even after all those years and different marriages, the families stayed very close. Andrew Parker Bowles is actually the godfather to Anne's daughter, Zara, and King Charles is the godfather to Camilla's son, Tom. This means that even though their romantic lives were messy a long time ago, they chose to stay friends and help raise each other's children. They decided that family and friendship were more important than old sad feelings. This is one of the secrets of the royal family that not many people talk about. The mean fights that newspapers like to talk about were actually finished a long time ago. They buried their old arguments while they were busy raising their children together. This is why the stories about a war between them today are so silly. They have been a big, blended family for decades, and they help each other out whenever they can. There is no secret group of people called the Council of the Blood or any Crown Integrity Audit. Those are just fancy names made up by people on the internet who want to make money from rumors. They have no real place in the palace. The royal family has real rules they follow, and they don't involve secret audits of Queen Camilla's children. Everything is much more professional and quiet than the internet makes it sound. The real rules that guide how the royals get their money and their houses are very old and very serious. We will talk more about that special document in a little bit. What is important to know now is that Princess Anne has always believed that the monarchy as a whole is more important than any one person. She learned this from her father, Prince Philip, and her mother, Queen Elizabeth. Anne does not use social media like Instagram or Twitter. She does not look for fame or try to get people to look at her. She just puts her head down and works harder than anyone else. Because she has been doing this for so many years, and because other family members have been sick, her strength has given her a lot of power. People trust her because she is always there and always doing her duty. You can see how much the family is changing by looking at what King Charles has done with Balmoral Castle. This huge estate in Scotland was bought by Prince Albert in 1852. He bought it as a special gift for his wife, Queen Victoria. They finished building the castle in 1856. It is a very big place that covers over 50,000 acres of land, which is like thousands of football fields put together. Balmoral is not owned by the government. It belongs personally to the person who is the king or queen. It has been passed down from one ruler to the next for many years. Queen Elizabeth loved Balmoral more than any of her other houses. It was her favorite place to go and enjoy the fresh air and the beautiful mountains of Scotland. She felt very peaceful there. Queen Elizabeth passed away at Balmoral on September 8, 2022. She was 96 years old. She was the first king or queen of Britain to die in Scotland in nearly 500 years. Because she died there, the plan to bring her back to London was called Operation Unicorn. Her coffin had to travel a long way, and many thousands of people stood on the side of the road to say goodbye as she passed by. King Charles decided to do something very new and different with this special house. For the first time in the 168 years since the castle was built, he opened the inside of the house to regular people who wanted to pay for a tour. In the summer of 2024, people could buy tickets to see the rooms where the royal family lived. This was a very big deal because it used to be a very private place. The tour were very popular. Tickets cost £100 for a person, or £150 if you wanted to have fancy afternoon tea there. Only 10 people were allowed in each group so it wouldn't get too crowded. Even though the tickets were expensive, they all sold out in just one day. People really wanted to see what the inside of the king's favorite castle looked like. People who went on the tour got to see the entrance hall and a long red hallway. They saw the library where King Charles does his work and the room where the family eats dinner together. In a big room called the ballroom, they saw paintings that the king had painted himself. They also saw beautiful clothes that were once worn by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and Queen Camilla. The king's experiment worked so well that he did it again in 2025 and is doing it even more in 2026. This year, the castle will be open for a long time, from March all the way until August. He is also letting more people join the groups. This shows how Charles is as a king. He is not throwing away the old ways, but he is changing them to make them work better for today's world. King Charles has spent 50 years waiting to be the king. During all that time, he had a lot of ideas about what he wanted to change. He is moving slowly and carefully, but he is making his ideas real. For example, he spent £3 million of his own money to buy a small cottage next to Camilla's private house. He did this because someone was using it for noisy weddings, and he wanted to make sure his wife had a quiet place to rest. It is important to look at the timeline of the king's health because there have been many confusing rumors. In January of 2024, the palace said he needed a small surgery for a common problem. But while he was in the hospital, the doctors found something else. On February 5, they told the world that the king had a type of cancer. He started getting medicine for it that same day. The palace never told us exactly what kind of cancer it was, but the king kept working as much as he could. By April, he was back at his desk meeting with people. He even went to the big parade for his birthday in June and met with the leaders of Japan. He wanted to show everyone that he was still strong and still doing his job, even though he was fighting a scary illness. In March of 2025, he had to go back to the hospital for a little bit because his medicine was making him feel a bit sick. He had to cancel a few meetings, but he got better quickly and went back to work. Later that year, he hosted Donald Trump for a big visit and even went to Rome to meet the Pope. He stayed very busy and did not let his health stop him from being the king. Then, in December of 2025, the king gave the news everyone was hoping for. He recorded a special video message. He told the country that because the doctors found the cancer early and gave him good medicine, he was doing much better. He said he would not have to go to the hospital as often in the new year. People were very happy to hear this good news. The palace said the king was in a precautionary phase. This means they are still being very careful to make sure the sickness does not come back. They were careful not to say he was completely cured, but things were looking very good. The numbers of how many jobs the royals did show how hard they all worked during this difficult time. In 2024, Princess Anne did the most work with 474 jobs. King Charles did 372 jobs, which is a lot for someone getting cancer treatment. Prince Edward and his wife Sophie also did many hundreds of jobs. Queen Camilla did 182. Prince William did 166, and Princess Kate only did 13 because she was also very sick with her own cancer battle. By 2025, the whole family was feeling better. Together, they did over 2,000 jobs, which was much more than the year before. King Charles was back at the top doing the most work. Princess Kate also started doing more work again in January after her doctors said she was doing better. The family was tested very hard, but they stayed together and kept going. Queen Camilla's son, Tom Parker Bowles, has a very interesting life. He is the Queen's only son, and he was born in 1974. When he was a baby, King Charles was chosen to be his godfather. Then, many years later, Charles married Tom's mother and became his stepfather. This means Charles has two special roles in Tom's life. There is no one else in the country who has a relationship like that with the king. Tom went to some very famous schools and then became a writer who talks about food. He writes for several big magazines and is a judge on a TV show called MasterChef, where people compete to see who is the best cook. He even started a business that sells a snack called pork cracklings. He is very successful on his own and does not rely on the royal family for his job. In 2024, Tom wrote a cookbook called Cooking and the Crown. It has recipes from many different kings and queens of England, going all the way back to Queen Victoria. Because he is part of the family, he was allowed to look at special old papers to find the best recipes. He was married for many years and has two children, a daughter named Lola and a son named Freddie. Tom has always said very nice things about King Charles. He says the king is very kind, smart, and a very tough man. He also said that his mother becoming the queen was never a plan they had. She just married the man she loved, and this is what happened. He says she is still just a normal mom to him, and they try to keep things as regular as possible. Tom's sister, Laura, chose a different path. She studied art and how to sell things at a university. She even worked at a famous art museum in Venice, Italy. For a while, she wrote about cars for a magazine and then became a leader at an art gallery in London. She likes art a lot and has spent her life learning about it and helping other people enjoy it. Laura got married in 2006 to a man named Harry Lopes. Their wedding was in a small village church, and the party afterward was at her mother's house, Ray Mill. Harry is from a very wealthy family and will one day own a huge amount of land in Scotland and England. He runs a company that makes clean energy. They have 3 children, including a daughter who is a bridesmaid for William and Kate. It is very important to know that Tom and Laura are not working royals. This means they do not have royal titles like prince or princess. They do not get any money from the government or from taxes. They also do not have police officers to protect them paid for by the public. They live their own lives and earn their own money, just like most other people do. The money for the Parker Bowles family comes from their own family, not the crown. King Charles even paid for Camilla's security himself before they were married. The royal family is very careful to keep their private money separate from the money the government gives them for their official jobs. This is how they make sure everything is fair. There is one very important set of rules that explains how the royals handle their money. Not many people have heard of it, but it was signed in 1993 by the leader of the country and the palace. It is called a Memorandum of Understanding. This document has been updated a few times, including when Charles became the king in 2022. It is the rule book for their money. This rule book is the reason why the big estates like Balmoral stay in the family. It says that when a king or queen dies and gives their private property to the next king or queen, they do not have to pay the 40% inheritance tax. This is a very special rule that only applies to the person wearing the crown. It helps keep the important history of the country together in one piece. The leaders of the country said this rule is important because places like Balmoral are used for official business, not just for fun. They warned that if the royals had to pay the huge tax every time a king died, they would have to sell off the land piece by piece to pay the bill. Soon, there would be nothing left of these historic places. The rule protects the history of the nation. This is why Camilla's house, Ray Mill, is so different. Because it is her own private house and not part of the official crown property, the special tax rule does not apply to it. When she passes away one day, her children would normally have to pay that big 40% tax. This is why putting the house into a trust now was a very smart and normal thing for her to do. The trust she set up in February is just a way to make sure the house can go to her children without any big problems or huge bills they can't afford. Harry Lopes and Jake Irwin are there to make sure everything follows the law. Tom and Laura will be the ones who get to use the house, but they don't own it in the regular way yet. It's just good planning. Queen Camilla still lives there and takes care of the place. There is no big scandal or secret drama here. It is just a mother making sure her children are taken care of, which is what most parents try to do. Some people who didn't read the paperwork tried to make it sound like an exciting movie, but it is actually just a very common way for people with big houses to handle their business. All of this shows us where the royal family is going in the future. Princess Anne is keeping the old traditions strong. King Charles is trying to be more open by letting people visit his castles. And Prince William has his own ideas, too. In late 2024, William said he wants to do things a bit differently. He wants to focus more on helping people and doing charity work. William said he wants the royal part of his job to feel a bit smaller and more focused on impact. He had a very hard year in 2024 because of his wife and father being sick, and he called it brutal. A man who writes books about the palace said that William is very aware of the mistakes his father might have made, and he wants to make sure he does a great job when it is his turn. So we have a queen making sure her family is safe, a princess who works all the time, a king who is opening his doors to the public, and a future king who wants to make the role more modern. The British monarchy is going through a lot of changes right now. It is the most interesting time for them in over 100 years. The story of the house at Ray Mill is just one small part of this much bigger story. The royal family is learning how to live in the modern world while still keeping their history alive. It is a work in progress, and the story is still being written every single day. We will have to wait and see how all these changes work out in the end. What do you think about Queen Camilla's decision to put her house in a trust for her children? Do you think it was a smart idea? And which of the royals do you think has the best plan for the future? Whether it is Anne's hard work, Charles's openness, or William's new ideas, the future of the king and queen will be very interesting to watch.